I've been studying coral reefs now for about 25 years, and seeing the death of reefs all around the world in my lifetime has really infected me almost with trying to make my science more relevant for preserving and ensuring that there are healthy reefs going into the future.
Being both educational, having a human component, human interest component with the subjects on the boat and everybody's backstories as to what was motivating them, and sort of the big picture idea of how the coral reefs are so reflective of the general health of the environment, and the deterioration of the coral reefs is a very sort of dire and imminent problem that I thought the piece really did a great job of reflecting the urgency around the issue and the kinds of people that are investing themselves in this. So I thought that the piece really worked well. Obviously, it had a great visual images under the water and some drone shots. But I thought that most importantly, the human component of the narrative really gave it a good sort of emotional depth that lets you understand what it meant to not just those people, but what it should mean to everybody, and how to educate people at scale in terms of this problem to motivate them to get involved.
So here we follow a team who go out twice a year to dive and essentially investigate and research these super corals and try to use this information that they gain in order to try to restore corals that are currently dying in our climate. And so we kind of get to see this very vigorous scientific process, but we really get to see the passion and the way that these people care. You know, we kind of see our character at the beginning of this that we follow throughout the entire piece, but we get a really great save the cat moment at the beginning of this film. You know, we see him with his daughter just in a swimming pool, and it's such a genuine, wholesome moment where, you know, he's talking about diving in the water and talking about how he's about to go research these corals and, you know, sort of asks her, you know, one day we can dive together. And she's like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to get on the boat. And it's just such a genuine, wholesome moment that they share.
I think how it starts off with a scene that seemingly has nothing to do with corals, but everything to do with corals. And it's a scene where the scientist and his daughter are in a pool together, and he's like talking to her about diving. And you're like immediately able to understand that even though this is a scene between a father and a daughter, that it's actually everything to do with corals, because you're primed to see corals through this like lens of being a small organism with a lifetime of its own, and you're immediately thinking about why we need to save and study corals, which is for the future generations. And I think that scene really realizes everything together without focusing on corals at all. I also think the music throughout this short is so lovely. My favorite parts were the music was when the music was paired with the science, and I think it was a really upbeat tempo, and it just makes you see science as something that's like fun and interactive and engaging. And I think it gives it a little bit of intensity, but in a really good and positive way.
Use terminology that's very accessible to people who you know, wouldn't know all of the scientific terms going into an oceanic like ecosystem, and I think that serves the piece really well. I think also a lot of the ways that you present the information through you know, not just factual statements, but through storytelling. I think there's a great personability that you build in this by having, you know, an opening scene with the father and daughter, and going into the ocean and seeing, you know, seeing different people interact with coral, and understanding it from not only a scientific perspective, but like it almost puts, for lack of a better term, like envy for the audience of like, oh, I want to see that. Oh, I want to interact with that. And I think that really furthers this cause of like wanting to preserve it, because there's going to be people out there who want to interact with the coral as well. I think it was incredibly informative. I think it was very entertaining for being such an informative piece.
all the work to preserve the corals, to pass the tradition of preservation and conservation, the passion you see behind the researchers' work, how they describe why this is important, and also the importance of them dedicating their lives to on their time to learn more and give us more insights on how to preserve it, but even grow it and learn from those specific species. Also, why it's important to get younger generations involved and interested and as passionate as they have beautiful shots, underwater shots, they incredibly high resolution, very powerful quality to represent what they are passionate about.
This film's very educational about what they're doing to try and preserve the corals. We hear all the time about people doing it and trying and working hard, but we don't actually get the science behind it and how that science works. And this documentary really showed what the people who are among the corals are doing, which was very impactful, more so than any news article talking about it, because you can actually learn what rather than just read because with these articles you have no idea what they're talking about half the time. But this actually showed us what they're talking about because they demonstrated it as they talked with the pipes and sending things to the labs and how important their work really is around the world to preserve our coral reefs.
I think this demystified the parts of the ocean, specifically like the corals, and like really like brought it like up close and personal to where it's like, oh, it's not that bad. You know what I mean? Like and also showed me like these scientists, which I respect. You know, they're doing good work and like all of that stuff. And the film really sold me on what on corals first of all, on the ocean, on scientists studying it, and like why it's important and all of that stuff. And so I say that to say like if it can do that to me, who's scared of the ocean? You know what I mean? Yeah, that speaks to how persuasive and effective this documentary is, which is I think kind of kind of part of the goal with a documentary.